Already, Mr. Emmanuel Amoah, in the Nkomo, or economist, near your thoughts on this matter you're discussing. Then again, on the matter of the position of the Catholic Bishops' Conference, the fact that they say poverty stares us in the face, and it looks like government cares not. The fight against corruption, the willingness to protect our public purse. They say they don't see it. Mr. Amoah, good morning.
Morning, Mina.
Na enom design pay. Yeah.
Yami Adam Namonzo.
You could come on. I am hoping, sir, what we did a Catholic Bishops' Conference, one more and somebody to Abontino. What was your reaction to the statements from the Catholic Bishops' Conference?
Medicine, I mentioned what you for a very important say a memo so such institutions like Catholic Bishops Conference, other stakeholders, Ediomano Betum, send so that they express their views on sending a memo. It is true, sir, the level of poverty was low in Ghana. And as a professional, what you have to do is to look at some level of data to back that session, Catholic Bishop Conference. But more importantly, beyond that, how can we reduce poverty, which should be the crux of the discussion. Now, I'm quoting from Ghana Statistical Service, a report on what we call, it's titled Multidimensional Poverty Ghana. And it is a very recent document. It was published in 2020. So that is what I'm going to use for the analysis. Now, if you look at this document, or say, multidimensional poverty, to say, take into consideration the living standards of the people, i.e., almost cooking fuel, any the home, and occur education, and so the people's access to education, and those issues, and health. It's basically three things, and I categorize it as multidimensional poverty. And so the report pegs Ghana's multidimensional poverty at 45.6%. Now, you juxtapose against what we call consumption expenditure poverty, which is how much do they spend on average? Because the World Bank has a data measurement you can't be a poor, or spending less than $1.9 in a day. And so in Ghana terms, in Ghana cities, around 11 cities, one or more spending less than 11 cities, which is about the consumption expenditure poverty, and also around 23.4%. In both statistics, whether multidimensional poverty, whether consumption expenditure poverty, the level of poverty fundamentally is high in Ghana. And so that is why policy should be able to address the level of poverty the system.
It's interesting the statistics you are giving us. But daily we get told to say macroeconomic indicators are favorable. Exchange rate, is stable. Inflation, is stable. Trade deficit balance, is stable. Reserves, one would say, is stable. So how then do we have these numbers when we are being told that our macroeconomic indicators are good?
Great. In measurement of any economy, the basic yardstick I will start with will be your macroeconomic indicators. And so fundamentally you want to assess, because a note should be able to trickle down to the micro. And so Ghana GDP grew by 14.1%. What is the impact of the 14.1% on solving these problems, i.e. poverty? In the Ghana economy, it shouldn't end with just the statistics and the numbers, but more importantly, how these statistics affect the daily lives of the people. And so I give an example, say, in Ghana's economy before COVID hit, the average growth was around 6-7%. But you can say, how did we lift a lot of people from poverty with this kind of growth rate? And on as an analyst and as a professional, no, my analysis has shown say sometimes the macro gains is not able to trickle down to the micro. So people are not seeing because the Ghana's economy grows. If you are doing a sectorial analysis, services sector will lead that economic growth. But Busa will say how many Ghanaians are engaged in the services sector so that when there is a growth in that services sector, it will trickle down to the populace or more benefit. And that is why we should not be fixated on just the numbers, but more importantly, how the numbers are affecting the day-to-day lives of the people. Quoting and by this report, Ghana Statistical Service, you could say health, there is a lacuna. Education, there is a lacuna. In terms of general living standard, there is a lacuna which government policy should be able to address, either than say we are fixated on macro figures, but more importantly, how are those macro figures affecting us, lift a lot of people from poverty? But one of the surest way to lift people from poverty is employment. And so when you give people employment, you give them a source of livelihood. But you must say, with this economic growth, has it led to the creation of the jobs that we need in the economy? Yet the surest and the sustainable way of lifting people out of poverty? And the question will be no, because we've not been able to translate these gains to solving the fundamental problems. And not to say but there is a long way to go. If multidimensional poverty is about 40%, now consumption poverty is around 23%. It means that we still have a long way to lift the living standards of the people.
In other jurisdictions, one more macroeconomic indicators now are a true reflection of the micro. How is it said in case the macro doesn't correlate with the micro?
Fundamentally, Ghanaians don't own the economy. And it's a painful fact that I have to tell you. And we can give an example. And I'm saying, if you look at sectorial analysis, Ghana, agri manufacturing and industry, agri industry and services. But the LED growth, for the past 10 years or so, acquire services. But in the services sector, Ghana for dominant. And I give you an example. Go to the banking industry. How many banks are owned by Ghanaians? And in terms of balance sheets of banks, Ghana, how many of them, the big size balance sheets, are Ghanaian banks? Go to insurance. Go to telecommunication. And you could see clearly that the growth driver of Ghana's economy, services economy, it is not being led and controlled by Ghanaians. Baby, as a growth in a multiplicity of effect, agri and manufacturing. And that is why government policy in solving the problems in these two industries, in these two sectors, i.e. the agri and manufacturing, is very fundamental. Into economy be grow, but Ghana for Nankasa Timemufono, and your economic growth in home. So it is owned by others. And that is the painful truth we have in our economy now. That's why the level of because economy need grow there, but sectors grow no. It is being occupied not by Ghanaians, but by outsiders. And so they declare huge profit and they repatriate their profit. At the end of the day, the economy grow, but it cannot economy anymore. It has been repatriated somewhere. And that is why we should have conversations around how to solve the critical challenges of agri and industry. Because if you look at even the labor market now, agri employs a lot of Ghanaians. But Ohono crowns are challenges in the dorsal. And so you have a lot of poverty levels even up in that agri sector. And that is why policy should be able to address how we can Ghanaians can participate in the growth in Angasa Ewo.
Are government policies and programs friendly towards Ghanaians when it comes to, for instance, the sectors that you mentioned, the telcos, you mentioned the, how do you call it? For instance, the mining industry, the banking sector, the insurance industry. Are government policies favorable? Ghana for to have that capacity?
To a larger extent, I think there's more to be done. And my example, for telecommunication sector, the largest telco in Ghana is MTN. There's no Ghanaian owned, even though the floater shares are Ghanaians have shares in it. Over Vodafone, Ghanaians have some small stake, and there is Nansinya, Airtel, Tigo, government, and Kasa are on it. A step in the right direction, so that we'll be able to participate effectively. Over mining, the large mining conglomerate in India, and Ghana for their Newmont in Ghana and India, Anglo Gold in Ghana and India, and all the big mining companies in Ghana for their. So how can government empower the indigenes to participate effectively? And I think that is the policy discussion we should start having. And I'm not saying I'm a nationalist economist. No, I'm not a nationalist. But the ground rules must be fair. And so, young fans say Ghana need person go into agriculture or go into large scale agriculture or kobo besian. The besian have on average 20%. Now agriculture with this risk now besian lending rate here 20%. How can the Ghanaian entrepreneur who wants to go into agriculture succeed in such a sector? And that is why policy discussions should be held around, how do we reduce the risk level, especially in sectors, i.e. agriculture industries, send their bottlenecks that these sectors are facing, we'll be able to address it for Ghanaians to own the economy and to lift a lot of Ghanaians out of poverty.
There's a very debatable aspect of Amoah-Darkwah, because you said, if we are going to have some form of relief, we should focus our attention on the agri sector. But someone would also say, if you talk about the ownership of these entities and the retention of revenues, normally at the end of the day, how about the angle of employment, the jobs that these businesses, though not necessarily owned by Ghanaians,
that's a good question, but in as much as they create jobs, I can give you a simple statistics. The mining industry, a year of staff top management, Ghanaians. Look at how much they are earning, not compared to the Ghanaian people. And this is verifiable information you can go and check. And at the end of the day, so also create employment. The value that people are getting from that employment creation, saying as compared to the outsiders. And so it is fundamental. So in as much as we talk about job creation, a lot of companies are setting up Ghana, telling us that we are going to create jobs, and so they want tax reliefs and tax rebates. But at the end of the day, the kind of jobs and the value of creation of jobs, it is not commensurate to the promises they made when they were setting up. And that is why policy to be able to address it. So we set it up was on my anymore. We should be able to start out the metrics or job creation potential saying. Now, how much do you even your profit system? These are high-level policy discussions we should be able to have with the investment community, especially the foreign investment community, so that Sika airborne minimum, but Sika also be to me at home minimum. Yet we are left a lot of Ghanaians from poverty.
We are signing different deals, different agreements with neighboring countries. Sometimes it promotes brands which are foreign than your local brands, because at the time that we were signing those agreements, we would get some instant reliefs or benefits from those agreements, but the long-term impact, affects your growth as a nation. Yeah. Are these not the things that rather we should be focusing attention on?
Yeah, that's what you have mentioned, and I think maybe if you can give an example of what you are talking about. But if I get it right, you are saying Todebia, we promote foreign against nationals, and a critical example I would talk about tax exemption. Tax exemption say they are foreign companies as compared to their Ghanaian counterparts, minimal. And so you look at calls from Private Enterprises Foundation and AGI and they will talk about tax exemptions foreign companies, as compared to their local ones. And how can you compete effectively with them in the same market? And that is why I'm happy about the tax exemption bill. But let's have a comprehensive discussion about it, because it's one of the things. So we saw Meridian Port. Look at the volume of tax exemption at the amount. Let's measure that as against the medium to long term prospect of the country. And you will see, sir, sometimes the deals and then the giveaways we have given to these companies, we've been shorting. And that is why we should be able to, talk about some of these things and look at policies a bit more resolve it, so that Ghana for Ankasa will own their economy. Fundamentally, Ghana for owning the economy and poverty levels are so better.
I'm a pay better one, so Jim and I need in common.
Menso me da no ati fu ase.